All right. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Ryan Leone. Starting, I already have a exclusive storyline going on that on that platform, but I'm going to be starting to do exclusive storylines for each different tier for Patreon. So check it out. Ask people that are already over there what they think. And let's get right into the story. Last time that we ended, I just had to go back and watch the last like 10 minutes of the video. Um, Karina and I had taken acid and gone to my friend Jesse's house. We had, uh, I mean, I've never really had a bad trip on acid. I mean, the snake ordinance and doing acid in county jail and then in prison that time, those aren't exactly, you know, preferable hallucinogenic experiences, but this was probably the most that like the darkest. And I mean, think about everything that I had on my plate. We were drunk. I was fighting with my parents. They had confiscated, or they wouldn't let me use my mom's car, so we missed the Pink Floyd concert down in, or the Roger Waters concert down in LA. And I was out on bail going back to prison. So I mean, it was like I had a lot of stuff on my mind anyway. Karina and I were fighting that day, and we just had a bad trip. Next day, um, Karina had to go to work the next day, and she did that a lot. I mean, she was like a straight up soldier when it came to stuff like that. We would party, and then she was able to just kind of get up, dust herself off, and go to work. I mean, who the fuck can go to work after tripping on acid for 16 hours the night before? She could. This is the problem, though. Her performance at work started to be affected by it. So, she had gotten warnings because she used to drink before she met me alcoholically for years and years and years. I mean, she'd gotten 3 DUIs in the span of a month back in 2009. Now it's 2017. She still doesn't have a driver's license because she has to complete, her DUI classes. And before she met me, she would bring, you know, pints of vodka to work, or she would go get a bottle of wine, at the pharmacy that's right next door to where the salon was. So she was drinking on the down low. She was drinking on the down low way before she met me. But when she met me, I was already a drunk, and also I was on zero fucks given mode because I knew I was going back to prison. So, my whole like philosophy on life was just live for the day, live in the moment, which isn't a bad way to live anyway. I mean, I guess if you have a kid, it's a little different, but you should enjoy every day and know that tomorrow's not promised because it's absolutely true. But I mean, I didn't have that kind of positive outlook on life. It was more just like I want to fucking party. I want to have sex with Karina, have a wild summer, and then get carted off to prison and hate my life. So we try to have as much fun as possible, but it started affecting her work performance. And she'd gotten caught drinking on the job a couple times. She'd gotten warned about it, and it seemed like when I met her, everything for her started to go downhill as well. It's like I always do that. I have all this baggage, and then I go into someone, a female's life, and just completely total it. It's like I'm like parasitical that, and the girl's the host. I always just seem to fuck all my girlfriends' lives over. I don't do it on purpose. It's just that's how sick I usually am when I'm completely consumed by drug addiction or alcoholism. So one particular day, when we first started dating, um, Karina would pay for like really nice hotels, and she would pay for really nice Airbnbs. Like I think I explained it before. Like sometimes she would pay like $400 for one night, and we would get like the entire upstairs of like some huge like 7-bedroom mansion in Montecito where the house is like $10 million. $400 a night for something like that, just for the top floor, you know. Then maybe they like the other bottom floor was Airbnb'd out to somebody else. So we were staying at these like very luxurious places. And when you're paying that kind of money for Airbnb, it usually comes with a bottle of champagne. Sometimes they have a pantry stuffed, fruit baskets, shit like that. You know, it's like $400 will get you VIP treatment in the Airbnb world in California. And I mean, we've spent more than that before, like 600 or 700, and you can get some ridiculous shit for that. But at this point, we were just living off her salon money and pretty much living off her day-to-day tips, which were dwindling because she was becoming such a drunk mess. Before she could manage it, I came into her life and it just sort of torpedoed her downhill. And we started staying at worse and worse places, you know. And I remember right at the end of like us being able to afford decent stuff, she had like this is at the point where we could still afford like an Airbnb for like $80, you know. And we were used to spending at least 150 one particular night. You know, my parents were already so mad at us because she would get caught sneaking in there so often, and I'd gotten caught sneaking into her parents' place a couple times, so they didn't want me over there. Really, our only option was hotel, Airbnb. Sometimes we'd be so drunk that we would get brave and just break into our family's houses and just pass out there. Sometimes like on the kitchen floor, totally inappropriate places to fucking pass out drunk, but you know, when you drink that much, that's what happens. So this particular night, she found a place for $80 that was in Goleta. Goleta is pretty much Santa Barbara, California. It's the same county. It's like, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes, 10 minutes away. Let's say it's like just this other town that's right next to Santa Barbara. It's a little less expensive there than the other parts of Santa Barbara, but still disproportionately more expensive than most other parts of the country. And we found this one, $80 a night. And usually with Airbnb, I'm sure most of you have gotten them, but if you hadn't, Airbnb is it's like a app that you can download, or you can go to the website and you type a zip code or a city, wherever you're trying to stay. Like if you're going on vacation, and then it's people's houses or apartments, condos, townhouse, whatever it is that is they're renting out for the night or for the week or for the month. And you can find some really good stuff on there. And usually when you book an Airbnb, they'll give you like a key to the place that you're renting for that night, or there's usually like a little keypad out front, and they'll like as soon as you pay for it, they'll send you an email confirmation. Will have like the key, the key code to get into the place. So this particular one had a lockbox that had a code, and they were renting out multiple rooms. So it was like probably like a 3 or 4 bedroom house. In every room in that house, they were renting out for $80. So we get there and we open this lockbox and we get the key, and we noticed that there was other keys in there. So that's how we figured out that there were other rooms in there that they were renting out. Anyway, we're still drinking Jack Daniels at that point. She still had a job. And so we had like our 5th of Jack that we'd always bring with us whenever we get an Airbnb. Typically, we'd meet, she'd get off work, we'd go to the park together, we'd drink, and then it would start getting dark and we'd like hastily try to find a place to stay. So that's what happened this night, and we already had a bottle of Jack Daniels. Probably already drank a 5th of Jack Daniels as well. We go into this house, and I remember it was just like, it was a very shitty room. I mean, it was just like a bed and like a little desk, and that was it. There was no TV in it. Usually when you rent like a single room like that, you at least get a TV or you get access to a shower. None of that. It was just a room with a bed in it, which pretty much served our purpose. I mean, it was a communal bathroom. Right when we get there, we get on the bed and we start fucking. That's what you do when you're in your early 30s. And I'm sure I've told this story before, maybe on the album or something. and we start fucking, and we're both loud. We are both incredibly loud people when we have sex. We're just, it's like almost ridiculous. It's like, ah! It sounds like we're hurting each other, but we're not. We're just fucking and having a great time. So it's understandable that, there's a knock on the door while we're in the middle. We were literally fucking for like 3 minutes like that. And I think, pretty sure it was doggy style, I want to say. Karina's mad at me right now, but I'd normally just like, hey, Karina, was it doggy style that time we were at the Airbnb? And she is a good sport and she'd say what it was. But I think I had her bent over and she was like, maybe I had her tied to the, like to the brass bed frame, whatever it was. We're some kinky drunk party people. So I don't really remember what it was, but I remember the way that we were having sex was making this brass, bed frame rattle and make a lot of noise. Plus, we're screaming like we're in some sort of slasher movie, and there's this knock, and like she's like, "Oh, what's that?" And I'm like, I don't know, probably being loud. She's like, "So we paid for this." I was like, "I agree." So we start fucking again. Start going. Shit starts rattling. Brrr. Again, she's like, "Oh my God. All right, let's just stop." So I like get off of her, untie her. No, I don't know if we were really doing that. Maybe. But, I like go. I don't even get dressed. She gets dressed, and I remember just walking naked to the door. I open it, and there's no one in the hallway. I'm like, what the fuck? And we go back to having sex again. This time, she gets on her phone and she puts on Spotify and she puts on some music to try to like drown out the sound, but it doesn't really do anything because we're incredibly loud when we have sex. Now my phone starts ringing and it's like some number I don't recognize. We stop having sex. I was like, hello, I'm all panting. Hello? Hi, this is so and so lady. This is so and so. We can hear you in there, and I have a 10-year-old son. You guys are very rude. And I was like, oh, ma'am, I'm so sorry. Okay. Hang up. Karina's like, who is that? Is that your side bitch? I'm like, it was. She wants me to go over to her place. I got to go. And she's like, oh my God, you're such a... I'm like, no. It's the person that owns this house. They said that we're being too loud and they have like a kid that lives here. And she's like, well, what the fuck? We're like in our 30s. What are we supposed to do? And it was like, I don't remember what time. It was not that late. It was probably like 10 o'clock at night or something. So I'm like, and we're not like the soft, romantic, like, honey, that eye contact's making me want to make love to you. And she's like, oh my God, will you recite another poem for me? And we're not like that at all. We're like animalistic, like, let me throw you over the bed and like pull your hair and like fuck you and stick my fingers in your throat. Jeez. Karina's gonna watch this and just be like, honey, the way that you composed your sentences in that was so stellar. I love it. No, I'm just kidding. She'll probably be mad about it. So we started having sex like, quietly. It was boring. Like it's like some love scene that you might accidentally watch like with your parents. Do you ever have that? Like where you're just like sitting on the couch with your parents and you guys are like, they're eating popcorn. Hey, can you pass that? And there's like butter all over your fingers and everything's cool. And then just some steamy sex scene erupts. And you're sitting there and your parent and like everybody's trying to act like there's not a fucking elephant in the room. Like there's people boning on TV in front of your parents. And it's just a really awkward thing. I'm sure everybody has dealt with that. I don't like it. And I mean, I always double down on the awkwardness and I start beating off. And I don't know, they're just not cool with it. So I try not to watch movies with sex scenes. No, I'm just kidding. I don't beat off. But what was the point? Oh, yeah. So, we don't really have like the soft sex, but we're trying. Again, we get a text message. And the text message is like, okay, enough's enough. You guys are being disgusting. And I'm like, Karina, I guess we're being disgusting. And she's like, what? tell him that sex is the most beautiful thing in the world. I was like, that's a good one. Sex is the most beautiful thing in the world. And I throw like a little like, like one of those like strong emojis, with like so it looks like you're strong. Sex is one of the most beautiful things in the entire world. And I press send. And then they just write back dot, 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 an ellipsis. And I was like, babe, they sent an ellipsis back. And she's like, oh my God, that means nothing. Let's fuck. I was like, okay. So we go back to it. Now, again, another text message from these people. Okay, that's it. That's it. That's it. I think you guys might need to go somewhere. I said, well, hold on. Text back. I said, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? We've been dating for a couple months. We're in our early 30s. We get a place like this because we want privacy. We can't have sex here. Is this on your rules? Send it. And she goes, no, it's not on our rules. So I said, what are we supposed to do? And she says, sleep would be a good idea. And I was like, oh, hell no. Fuck this. Let's go. Grab her by the hand. I'm like, come on, let's go, Karina. And we just take off. So we leave. And I think we ended up taking an Uber to, I know we took one to 7-Eleven, got more alcohol. I remember that. And then I think we took the Uber back to my parents' house. And I over the years I've learned how to like break into my window, so I did that, and we probably just passed out in my room. And if they like, a lot of times if they didn't know that we were sleeping there, it was like 50-50. Sometimes they'd catch us, sometimes they wouldn't. That particular night they didn't. And that was kind of like the beginning of the end when we started paying for cheaper Airbnbs, because you get what you paid for. I remember shortly after that, we went to go stay with this weirdest guy that we've ever stayed with. Probably one of the weirdest people I've ever met in my life. And I mean, that's saying quite a bit. This guy was the weirdest. He was, Ed Gein, the serial killer that was in Wisconsin that used to like dig up corpses and fuck them. Now, I'm not saying that this guy did that, but he seems like the type that would. And if you do get an Airbnb, always read the reviews, because the reviews are very telling. So we go stay with this guy. And, and I'd read a couple sketchy reviews about him, like reviews like, yeah, this is Monica from Wyoming. I went to Santa Barbara for a weekend getaway and stayed with so-and-so, thinking it was going to be a chilly spot. And it was weird. The host interacted with us. He wanted to bake cookies, and he was just crazy. I don't like it when hosts interact with me. I'm just trying to get my getaway or whatever. I'm like, huh. But usually shit like that's the only thing available. It's like a Saturday night that when we try to book this. So we end up getting it. And yeah, he was like a Norman Bates type, It wouldn't surprise me if he had like a dead mom in the foundation boards of the house or something. We get in there. Now, first of all, he's bug-eyed. He's one of those. I mean, he looks like a bug. Karina and I are drunk, so we don't really pay attention to him. He's just like, he's not really saying anything. And I'm like, hey, man, where's the room? Now, like I said, with Airbnbs, I've never stayed with somebody that that when I got the email confirmation, it was like, oh, hey, text me when you're 17 minutes from the house so that I can know to be ready, so that I can escort you up to the corridors. It's like, what the fuck? Are you taking me to some castle? And it wasn't like that. It was like some shitty house on the west side of Santa Barbara. It was not very nice. So I text him 17 minutes before. It was something random like that. I don't know if it was 17 minutes, but it was like some weird, it was like, text me 22 minutes before arrival. And then he's this bug guy. And it's a 2-story house. I'm like, okay, so where's the corridors? He's like, yeah, just follow me up here. I was like, okay. So we go up, and he's like, hey, the television doesn't work. I was like, oh, that sucks. And he'd be like, are you suggesting that you don't want to stay here? I was like, no, man. We're cool. I'm looking at Karina. I'm like, what the fuck? So I close the door, and then this guy's like, excuse me. Before 10 p.m., we keep the door to the guest room open. With these bug eyes the whole time. And Karina's like, she's like, I fucking hate this guy. She said it right in front of him like that. And I was like, yeah, sir, we need some privacy. I'd court the next day too. So it was actually a Sunday. I always had court on Mondays for the pimping and pandering case. And it was just, I don't know, some shit where we're just going to keep postponing things. And this guy wouldn't let us not be in the room with the door open, gave us no fucking explanation. So we're like, okay, we're just gonna go on a walk and we'll be back. So we end up going to the liquor store and like and Karina's like, dude, I don't know. Guy seriously seems like he's a serial killer. I'm like, yeah, it's weird, right? Like, why would you be at an Airbnb and not be able to close your the door to your room until a fucking specific time? Totally bizarre. Plus, the room we were staying in was probably like adjacent to his master bedroom, and it was like literally like 4 feet away from each other. So like you could hear every sound. Not that we care. We'd always get so wasted. We would totally disregard, everyone around us and just be completely disrespectful. Drunk people. It's not a shocker there. We end up spending a lot of time outside of this guy's house, and we go back, and his door's shut. Thank God. We go into the room that the TV's broken. It's more like a loft than anything else. It's kind of like claustrophobic in there. It's very like tight. The corridors are very tight. So, I'm a chain smoker, and I can't smoke inside of this place. So I was constantly having to go, downstairs to the front door and smoke on the balcony. Do that a couple times. It's like 4 a.m. I'm probably just in boxers, no shirt, whatever. Walk down the stairs to the front. I'm smoking, and I am like, and Karina's passed out. She's not like she was smoking cigarettes at that point, but not like I did. She might smoke like 5 or 6 a day. I was smoking like probably 2 or 3 packs, and she was paying for most of them. That and my royalty money. And as soon as I finish the cigarette, I look up, and there's just this silhouette of the weirdo standing at the top of the stairs. I was like, hey man, yeah, I was just going outside to have a smoke. And he's like, you're not allowed to smoke here. I was like, well, that wasn't on the rules or anything. He's like, are you suggesting that I would make some shit like that up? I'm like, no, man, I'm cool. You know what? I got court in the morning. I just want to go to sleep. He does not move as I walk up the stairs. So he's just standing there like, all super weirdo. I walk up, kind of brush him a little bit and just keep going upstairs. Karina's like, kind of like acknowledges that I'm back, and she kind of like drapes her arm around me. And I'm just like kind of shake her up, awake a little bit. I'm like, hey, honey, dude, I don't know if we should stay here. This guy's like on some really weird shit. And she's like, what do you mean? She's like half asleep. And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable here. And she's like, she's all drunk. I'm like, let's have sex. She's like, okay. So we end up having sex. And by the way, we're very quiet about it. Very quiet. Like, I remember we tried to do it on the bed, but it would kind of make noise, like rattling. So we just like got down on the floor and had sex, And the next day we went to court and got postponed, whatever. I was all hungover. It was horrible. And when I got back to the place, because we left our stuff there, I didn't want to we didn't have much. I had like a backpack, and I think she had like a little, duffel bag or something. And when we got back there, he's just like, do you think I'm stupid? Like, we were just grabbing our shit to leave, And I was like, so now I'm just kind of like trying to entertain this madman because it's kind of funny to us. And I'm like, I go, what are you suggesting? He's like, what am I suggesting? What are you suggesting? Do you think that I don't know what you did in that bedroom last night? I have a brother. He said that. I was like, what the fuck? I literally grabbed my girl and I'm like, dude, get the fuck out of my way. We're out of here. Grabbing my stuff. He puts his hands on my shoulder and I'm like, dude, the fuck off of me. Do not touch me again. I will report your fucking weirdo ass. He's like, do you not know what you did in there last night? I'm like, you know what? I'm cool. I am cool on you. You touch me one more time, I'm gonna fucking knock you out. And he was like, I don't know. He wasn't in good shape. I had just gotten out of prison, and even though I was an alcoholic, I was still like working out I was in better shape than I am now, that's for sure. And I was still drunk because that's how heavily we drank the night before. When I'm drunk, I'm usually a little more combative. You know, I usually am a little more eager to be in a fight, even though I've never really been like the kind of guy that wants to start fights. But when I'm drunk, I'm a little more, you know, I get swayed in that direction a little easier. So, and he's just standing there like that. And I literally like just kind of like, you know, football check his ass. And he doesn't do anything. He just like is looking. And, you know, I fucking forget. I wish Karina wasn't mad at me because I'd ask her right now. I will ask her. I'll say on the next video. But we ended up, you know, leaving. We took an Uber out of there. And I don't think she was working that day. I think Mondays were like her day off. They like coincided with whatever, you know, my court appearances. And I think since I was going pretty frequently, that's the day that she took off. Yeah. So this was definitely a Monday. And I forget why, but there was something that he had said to us that kind of hinted at suggested at the fact that he recorded us or something. Like he knew, I forget what it was. I mean, I was drinking a lot back then, so my memory's spotty, but I got to ask Karina. It was like somehow we knew that he was filming us having sex. We didn't get paid for it. I was like, should we send him an invoice? She's like, ew, you're so gross. I'm not one of your hooker friends. I was like, okay. All right. So I'm really not sure what happened, but it was like to the point where we wanted to file a police report because he was so weird. We definitely left like a weird review saying no sex, no cigarettes, don't suggest anything if you stay with this fucking weird. He was like a child molesting pirate. That's how he talked to you. Are you suggesting? And, you know, that's one of the problems you run into when, you know, you get an Airbnb. So what happens is, you know, those are just a couple examples of like bad experiences we had when we were doing Airbnbs. Eventually, we couldn't even afford that, and we got down to like Motel 6s, and then we got to a point where we couldn't even afford that. And when we got down to that point, and like I couldn't steal my parents' credit card and get an Airbnb, I couldn't really do I couldn't contribute anymore. And Karina ended up going to work really drunk one day. We were already arguing. I'm not sure why, but I don't know. We always used to argue over stupid stuff. She was drinking a lot. I remember that she was kind of stumbling. If she drinks too much, that's how she gets. She gets stumbling drunk. And I remember we were walking back to her work and I was like, hey, babe, are you in a good enough condition to go to work like this? She's like, shut up. You know that I'm a rock star. I was like, all right. Right when we get to her work, she just falls flat on her face right in the entrance of the salon, like cuts her face. Like she just was walking. I think she was wearing platforms and just tripped. I was like, oh my God. I like jumped out. I was like, honey, are you okay? And she's like, ah. It was really kind of terrifying. I mean, it looked like something straight out of a horror movie. She like had her hair like all fucked up in her face. She's like, ah, and there's like blood. She just scraped her face kind of superficially, but still, it was really loud. You know, not loud in like, yeah, well, it was in volume as well, but loud as in it was just super conspicuous. It was flagrant as fuck. She's flailing to the point where she's wearing platforms and just falls on her face, has this frizzy hair. It's all unkempt because we're just on this straight bender together. And because of that, maybe not that day, but within the next couple of days after that, she got fired. Once she got fired, we were in a really bad financial situation because we were relying on her tip money just to be able to sustain our day-to-day alcohol consumption. And geez, without without having the tip money, we were kind of screwed, and like we would get that, and then we get the paycheck, but the paycheck was whatever. So when she became unemployed, we had to start figuring out creative ways to get alcohol. Now, the first way that we got it is not so creative. We would just go to the grocery store and steal alcohol, which was pretty sketchy considering I was on federal probation and out on bail. And, she was doing it too. We were both like, she'd have these like insanely big purses. And I'd just be like, come on, let's grab like 4 bottles of wild turkey from Trader Joe's, just throw them in her bag. And we got away with that a lot of times. And then sometimes we would just kind of lurk up by my parents' house. They lived by an old hotel. And we would just walk around the property. We'd wait for maids that would be cleaning out the room, and like they'd find like half full bottles of vodka, full bottles of champagne, stuff that the concierge had given them, whatever. And we would just steal that, and I put it in my backpack. That's like how we were paying for our alcohol. A lot of times we would, start staying like at Jesse's house. One time we stayed at Jesse's house for like literally a week without him even knowing it. The only reason that he ever knew that we were there, we just kind of hid in that room. We'd have like really quiet sex because we had to. And she's like, why don't you just ask him? I was like, one of your best friends. I'd be like, no, 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 no. What if he says no? Let's just stay here. It was creepy. It got to a point where we were so bored because there's no TV in that room that we would just kind of if you open the door and it cracked a little bit, like that much, you could like see his living room and you could see what was on TV. We're like literally like field mice. Like we'd open the door like that much. And we both kind of just peek out so we could watch TV that way. And we'd like argue. She'd be like, no, I want the upper spot. It was like better if you were like above the other one. If you were like below, you couldn't see because there was this couch obstructing it. Play like rock, paper, scissors for her, and she'd always be like, you cheat. You're always scissors. I'm like, well, if I'm always scissors, then why don't you just be rocks? She's like, shut up. All right. Well, I'm getting the top spot. She's like, piece of shit. And then we ordered a pizza because we were hungry. And the fucking dude came. We told the Domino's or whoever we had ordered from, we told them specifically, like, hey, don't go ring the doorbell. Whatever you do. They ring the doorbell. They're like, pizza for Ryan and Karina? Or whoever, it's probably just one of us. And Jesse was like, I didn't order a pizza. And I just like pop out. I'm like, oh, hey, Jess. Yeah, that's for us. He's like, what the fuck? I'm like, hey, don't even trip, man. Here, I'll give you a couple pieces. He's like, what? And, we were like having to use her dad's credit card to order it, give him a couple pieces. And I go back in the room. We're like, all right. And we probably have about 30 minutes before he boots us. And then he'd be like, you guys can't just be at my house like that, bro. I'm like, oh, for sure. Won't happen again. Then he started locking the door, so we couldn't do that anymore. So it got to a point where, we had pretty much burned all of our bridges because we were just being selfish as alcoholics. Jeff barely let us stay there. Sometimes her best friend would let us sleep in her car together. So and it was super uncomfortable in the back seat. And then sometimes, we would really have like nowhere to go and we just wander around all night until we got tired enough and just like pass out like in a park or something. And it was pretty shitty. Like we would like get newspaper and put it over ourselves. It got to be that bad at one point. And then there was an open house one day for it was probably like a 3 or 4 bedroom house. We were walking in some residential neighborhood, and there was like a liquor store around there. We got liquor, and a lot of times I would spange too, so we get cigarettes, liquor, and we see this open house. I'm like, let's just go to the open house. And he's like, well, why would we do that? We're literally panhandling for alcohol money. I'm like, Well, maybe it's a good deal. I think I was just bored. So we end up going to this open house, and the guy that's the realtor is like our age. He's cool. Starts chopping it up with me. He's like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" I'm like, "I'm a best-selling writer." He's like, "Really? What have you written?" And I tell him about my book. I'm like, "Yeah, the film version's going to come out at some point too." He's like, "Wow, that's really cool. Let me show you this house." So he starts showing us around and everything. I think, like I said, just for entertainment. That's why we're there. And he ends up showing us this huge wine cellar. There's like hundreds of bottles of vintage wine. Karina and I, like, I mean, I don't have a vagina, but I can say with all honesty that we both just got straight wet about it. We're just like, we're like quivering and like holding our crotches just to see that much wine when we're just like strung the fuck out on booze. So we make some lame excuse and we start going in there and like systematically taking the wine bottles, and I think we got like 6 or 7 wine bottles, and we told the guy that we were interested, that we might want to see it again. So we got to do the same exact thing at this open house. I think all in all, we got like 22 bottles of wine. She would just keep going back and forth, putting them in her purse. Then we'd fill up my backpack outside, and it was like a clean getaway. And, we'd each drink like a couple bottles of wine in a day, whatever. If we weren't drinking hard liquor, it seemed like the headaches with wine were just a lot more severe than hard liquor for me, at least. And then I came up with an idea, and I'm like, well, wait a second. A lot of these houses don't even have owners in them. They're just like, they have stage furniture, but there's no one living here. But sometimes they have like working TVs. And I remembered it from high school because we used to party at abandoned houses like this. I'm like, what if we just pretend like we're buying a house? I mean, we clean up pretty well. We both look pretty clean cut when we want to. I'm like, why don't we just go like make up some crazy shit? Like, you're a fashion designer, I'm a novelist. We'll wear like nice clothes. We'll go pretend like we're going to buy these houses, figure out which ones have owners living there or not. And the ones that don't, we'll just start breaking into their houses. And Karina's like, oh my God, such a good idea. Let's do it. So we started doing that. And what we would do is we'd go there and we'd be like, hey, do the owners live here? Because I got to be honest, I just came into a pretty comfortable trust. There's kind of some urgency to our decision to purchase. So we kind of need to know if they're still living here, how long the escrow process could take, et cetera, et cetera. Oh no, the owners are actually Asian Americans, and they're, they're overseas at the moment. So no, you can move right in. Aha, no way. As soon as we'd find that out, I'd be like, hey, can I go use the restroom? I'd always go to the restroom and I'd look at the window system. Now, I'd be able to tell if there was an alarm system, and sometimes there are motion sensors. We also could get around that, which I'll get into later, but we'd like put stickers over them. We had all sorts of creative ways to do this, but our most simple scam was we'd figure out if it was going to be stage furniture or not. And, the realtor would be like, oh no, they don't live here. I'd be like, oh, wow, hey, can I use your restroom? Go right to the restroom, make sure they don't have an alarm, and then I would break the latch sometimes, or sometimes I would rig it so that I could open it. Sometimes maybe I'd stick something like on like a toothbrush handle, whatever I could find. Usually there's like some dusty like toothbrush handle or whatever I could find. I'd make makeshift things that could keep the window open. Sometimes I could just break the latch, just depended on what the situation was. Sometimes there was a screen in it and I would just pop the screen out and then I would close it so it looked like it was closed, but it wasn't, and the screen was missing. So it was like super easy to break in now. And then we'd come back, we still had like enough money to get Ubers, which I mean, maybe $5 or $10. And that's what we would use to, because we had to use the Uber. That's one thing we had to do. Alcohol we could steal. Cigarettes we couldn't really steal, but I could panhandle. Uber, we needed to leave some money on the card because we had to get around. We had to sometimes go to her parents' house so she could get clothes. Sometimes we'd have to go to these open houses. And I was still getting some money from our royalties. So that's kind of like how we kept that up. We'd come stake out the house, make sure that the realtor was gone, and then I'd go climb in the window of the bathroom, and we would literally stay at these houses. Some of them were fully furnished mansions. We just lounge in king size bed watching, TV. It just would have like basic cable usually, but like sometimes, we just lay in bed and we watch like stand up on my iPhone, or lots of skate videos, shit like that. And that was like the direction that summer seemed to be moving in. And I remember, at one point, Santos, Will De Los Santos, the guy that wrote, produced, spun, who had bought the rights to my book. He was the one that was going to adapt it into a screenplay. He had invited me down to LA, to, I don't know, just come over to his house. I mean, we were friends before, I'd gone away on the DUI. Sometimes I'd be fighting with my wife and I go stay with him, whatever the case was, my ex-wife. But, so he invited me down to his place. I don't think I'd seen him since the deal had gone through. So, I talked to my parents, said, hey, Santos wants me to go down to Hollywood. Can I please use your car? So my mom let me use her car. I drove down there, and as I'm driving, I get a Facebook message from my Karina, my ex-boyfriend's girlfriend. Message just pops up, which is weird because usually those messages go to like another folder. I think maybe she had friend requested me, I'd accepted it, so maybe I didn't know that we were friends. Whatever the case was, she sends me a message and she goes, hey, can you keep your bitch on a fucking leash? She's constantly still getting at my man, saying that she still loves him and that you're just a joke and you're just some lame that she's with before you go back to prison. I was like, it was like getting a dagger put into my chest. I was like, what? And I'm driving, right? I'm driving like on the freeway in LA. I'm like on the 101, just about to get off on Hollywood Boulevard, I want to say. I don't know, wherever. I was on the 101, maybe I was getting off on Highland. Whatever the case was, I was getting off the freeway right when this message came up. So I get off the freeway, I turn, and I read it again just to make sure that I read it correctly. And it said, hey, can you keep your bitch on a leash? She's still getting at my man, which is her ex, saying that she doesn't really love you. She still loves him, and that you're a bitch, and that she's just with you until you go back to prison. I was like, it's got to be the size of my whammer. Chicks just love to rage it with me. No, I was really hurt. And she's just like all drunk listening to like the new, Kendrick Lamar, which was an album we listened to, Damn, every day, all day. That was like the soundtrack to our lives that summer. That's right when that album was just popular and we were just listening to it all the time in its entirety. And so she was like probably listening to something like that and, just being drunk and annoying. And I was like, hey, honey. And she's like, what's up, baby? And I was like, hey, let me see your phone. She's like, okay. And she hands it to me. And I just roll my window down very nonchalantly, just roll it down, grab the phone, and I just fucking chuck it out the window. And she's like, oh my God, what the fuck is wrong with you? And she just starts, slapping me and shit. And I'm just like, I'm driving. Thankfully, I had already pulled off the freeway. So I was like on kind of like a busy commercial, section of Hollywood. And she's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And like, I pull over, like to some curb, and, we can get into the rest of this story, the rest of the Pimping and Pandering Chronicles next time. I just wanted to get something out tonight for my Patreon family. Love and appreciate you guys. Stay safe. If you don't have hepatitis C, you're a cop. Doesn't matter if you have a small dick, if you have a bomb personality. Remember to wash your hands. Like, comment, subscribe. Don't snort shit and record videos. What's that other stupid shit I say at the end? Palabra.